Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born in his family home on August 20th, 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island. His earliest literary works began at age 7 with poems restyling Homer's Odyssey and other mythological tales. As a child, he was enamored of the Greco-Roman pantheon of gods, accepting them as genuine expressions of divinity and foregoing his Christian upbringing. At the age of 8, he took a keen interest in the sciences, particularly astronomy. Over the next 3 decades, his research ranged from chemistry and biology to archaeology and anthropology. Lovecraft is best known for his creation of what became the Cthulhu mythos. The creature, which appears throughout his narrative, is often identified with the fish god Dagon, and was clearly inspired by the merfolk of Levantine lore. His biographers state Lovecraft spent all his life within New England, except for a couple of years in New York City. There is no definitive evidence that he ever traveled overseas, but it's very likely he visited Italy, like many American and British authors of his day, such as Mark Twain, Thomas Hardy, Henry James, Edith Wharton, James Joyce, Ezra Pound, and Ernest Hemingway. Lovecraft's close friend and correspondent, Alfred Galpin, married a French woman and eventually moved to Italy. In his story, The Shadow over Innsmouth, Lovecraft called the fictional town of Innsmouth a considerably twisted version of Newburyport, Massachusetts. Innsmouth, he goes on to say, is a queer kind of town, down at the mouth of the Monoxet, badly cut off from the rest of the country by marshes and creeks. Most interesting of all is the strange jewelry associated with Innsmouth, of which there are specimens in the Museum of Miskatonic University at Arkham. The material seems to be predominantly gold. The patterns all hint of remote secrets and unimaginable abysses in time and space. Among these reliefs are fabulous monsters of abhorrent grotesqueness and malignity, half ichthyaic and half batrachian in suggestion. Here and there, the ruins of wharves jut out from the shore to an indeterminate rottenness. Those farthest south seeming the most decayed. And far out at sea, a long black line scarcely rises above the water, yet carries a suggestion of odd latent malignancy. All the houses are apparently deserted, and there are occasional gaps where tumbled-down chimneys and cellar walls tell of buildings that have collapsed. One side of the cobblestone open space is the straight line of the river. The other is a semicircle of slant-roofed brick buildings. The tottering waterfront hovels, north of the river, are reputedly connected by hidden tunnels, being thus a veritable warren of unseen abnormalities. There is a ruined station whose rails are rusty but mostly intact. In his sophisticated narrative, Lovecraft digresses from the description of architectural and artistic objects to review the mythological and historical underpinnings of the society that produced them. He describes a cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon, which offered human sacrifices to marine deities known as the Deep Ones, in exchange for wealth in the form of large fish hauls and unique jewelry. Male and female inhabitants were forced to breed with the Deep Ones, producing hybrid offspring which have the appearance of normal humans in early life, but in adulthood slowly transform into Deep Ones themselves and leave the surface to live in ancient undersea cities for eternity. Next to Innsmouth is another fictional town named Arkham, its ancient history as a cultural and economic hub is shrouded in mystery. Innsmouth's inhabitants are depicted as inbred, uneducated, and very superstitious, living in decrepit and abandoned buildings. Massachusetts is nicknamed the Bay State because of several large bays which distinctly shape its coast. It has plenty of ponds, lakes, and rivers, but quite differs from the coastal region Lovecraft describes in The Shadow over Innsmouth. He only mentions two rivers, namely the Miskatonic and the Monoxet, as being the only ones in the surroundings. The place that must have inspired Lovecraft, both geographically and culturally, is the Veneto region of Italy, and specifically the foggy Rovigo province, that is, the northern part of the Po River Delta. After all, even the Bard of Avon, William Shakespeare, set some of his plays in Veneto. The wedding to the sea is an arcane Venetian ceremony symbolizing the indissoluble link between Venice, personified as the goddess Amphitrite, and the Adriatic Sea, represented by Poseidon. The Po is the longest and deepest river in Italy. Its ancient name was Bodincus, meaning the bottomless or the deep one. It flows past the town of Adria into the Adriatic Sea, about 50 kilometers south of Venice. The Po and Adige, the two major Italian rivers, converge into the same wetlands. This area was known to the ancients as the Seven Seas region because of 7 interlinked coastal lagoons separated from the open sea by sand pits and barrier islands. It was a crossroads of civilizations such as the Veneti, Etruscans, Greeks, Celts, and Romans, where a rich merfolk mythology flourished. In The Shadow over Innsmouth, Lovecraft may have drawn on the myths of Glaucus and Phorcys. Glaucus began his life as a mortal fisherman, but ate a magical herb that caused him to grow more and more fish-like, eventually forcing him to dwell forever in the sea. Phorcys, instead, was depicted as a tentacled and clawed merman whose offspring guarded a hoard of golden artifacts in secret underground chambers. Excavations around the Po River Delta have unearthed pottery, amber, and golden jewelry. The origin of the name Adriatic can be traced all the way back to the town of Adria, one of the most advanced prehistoric communities in northern Italy, predating Venice by at least 1,000 years. Several details in Lovecraft's description of Innsmouth and Arkham tally exactly with the grim landscape and architecture of this region, such as the pillared hall and the decapitated steeples of Rovigo, the forlorn railway stations between Rovigo and Chioggia, the winking beacon of Porto Viro, the reef and tunnels of Porto Levante, and so on. The slideshow you are watching refers entirely to the aforementioned localities. Lovecraft may have found several similarities between the coastal region of Massachusetts and the Po River Delta, especially in terms of the rusticity of the local population, which appear to be frozen in time and steeped in age-old beliefs. The most prominent theme in Lovecraft's narrative is humanity's fear of the unknown, the prevalence of atavism and idolatry, the scandal of suffering, and the apparent impossibility of changing one's destiny. Now, none of this means that we are powerless to transform our current condition. It is ignorance which can lead to feelings of helplessness. Well, to those interested in this intriguing topic, I recommend the 2004 movie H.P. Lovecraft's Road to L. I make cordial acknowledgement to Cynthia Gutierrez, without whose help this video would not have been possible. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share this video with fellow enthusiasts and researchers.